right, we are back here at Song of the Day, coming to you from the Rock Cave. It is Saturday, and it is a big day for me here in the cave. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. We've talked a little bit about it here and there, but today is an actual anniversary of one of the biggest records in my life. And yes, you guessed it, you can see here I'm sitting in front of my Floyd wall, and I got the shirt, so we must be talking about something to do with that, right? So we're going back to this date, January 23rd, 1977. Pink Floyd released the album Animals, right? So I know there's a lot of people out there who are either casual Floyd fans or not fans at all maybe, or just fans of particular songs. So we're going to go through this a little bit, and if you're interested, give a listen. Some of you people know this story, some don't. It's kind of, you know, stick with it, see what you think. But I know for sure that this record is off of most people's radar. So let's get to it, as I say. So just a review for the non-super fans. Remember, Pink Floyd releases Dark Side of the Moon, 1973, right? Which becomes like the most epic album of all time. It spends a total of 957 weeks on the charts. It actually set the record for longest stretch, continuous stretch on the Billboard top album charts at 736 weeks. That's 1973 to 1988. It was on the charts that whole time. So that's a pretty big act to follow, right? And when they do follow it up, they follow it up with Wish You Were Here, which has 5 songs on it, 2 of which are 25-minute long, Shine On You Crazy Diamond. Anyway, that's a great record. And then now they're coming in and they're working on this. This is like their 10th album. So you think about some of those themes and some of those earlier records. You got the song Money, you got Have a Cigar off of Wish You Were Here, you got Welcome to the Machine. They're talking about capitalism and class and all this stuff, right? So that's what's kind of been woven into their music. They sit down and go to the studio in 1976. They have 2 songs already. One's called Raving and Drooling, and one's called You Gotta Be Crazy. And those 2 songs were left off of Wish You Were Here. And those 2 songs can totally fit in with those themes that we're talking about. But that's what they're working with. And this whole session and this whole album and this whole tour actually becomes the end of Pink Floyd as we know it by the time it gets through to the wall. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But they have these 2 songs. Roger Waters starts basically taking over consistently the only songwriter. Nobody had anything else anyway, but he was the one who was really doing all the writing here. And so they went through this and really started, Roger Waters started thinking about, again, issues of class and society and money. And he, of course, borrowed heavily from Animal Farm and decided that he would break people up into different animals. So there would be sheep, dogs, and pigs, right? So in the end, Raving and Drooling becomes dogs, and You Gotta Be Crazy becomes dogs, and Raving and Drooling becomes pigs. And you've got society, you've got the sheeple, you've got, you know, the whole thing's working on here, right? Pigs was based on Roger Waters' distaste for a woman named Mary Whitehouse, who came on and said that she was really against sex and violence on TV to a puritanical stance, really. And he was really annoyed, so that when the lyrics of that song, he says, "Hey, you Whitehouse," he's talking about her. He split up instrumental, which is Pigs on the Wing, which has mostly instrumental. It's got two verses on there. He actually splits that song up to beginning and end, and that kind of irked the band a little bit because that doubled his songwriting royalties for that part of it. So anyway, this record is, I mean, it did well with the reviews for the most part. They went to go do the shoot for this album cover, right? Famously. And this is at the Battersea Power Station. And they had this giant inflatable pig, which we've talked about. And it had glowing eyes. And the big plan was to release it so they could get this shot. And then in case it was a very windy day, in case the balloon pig got away, they hired a sharpshooter to shoot it down in case it got away. So the first day of the shoot, everything went swimmingly, so no problems. So for the second day, they're like, well, we don't need to pay that guy. We don't need him today. Everything went great. So they didn't have the sharpshooter, and sure enough, the winds broke free, and the pig gets loose and flies, and they have to track it down, and they end up tracking it down in a field out in the country on a farmer's field. And I guess he was none too happy when they had to go onto his land and collect said pig from his cow field. So that's the famous story of this album cover. When they released it, it went to number 3 in the United States and number 2 in the United Kingdom, so not too bad, right? This is the actual ad in Rolling Stone magazine. Yeah, so one of my favorites. Rolling Stone did not like this record. There were a lot of critics who liked this record, but Rolling Stone famously, I have the actual review also that goes with that, famously said it was feckless. And they said basically Pink Floyd takes you high, brings you low, and that's what they did with a thud. That's how they ended their review, with a thud. So that was famously panned. There were no singles off this record, so you didn't hear really any of this on the radio. They go on the tour. It's In the Flesh. It's called In the Flesh Tour. And it's very elaborate. They have a new guitarist, a session guitarist, Snowy White, who would play with them, and Roger Waters through the years. And they would open up with this long instrumental piece, and the fans were confused. There's 85,000 people going to a show and this new material. You know how that goes, but there would be like just this long instrumental, and they're like, who's this guy? What's this song? So sometimes people would get a little irritated. They just wanted to hear the song Money, I guess, you know. So the band itself is just not getting along during this time, and they're getting wealthy, and but there's a lot of animosity between them. They're not getting along at all, and Roger Waters in particular starts to just feel really alienated. He sees this giant sea of people, 85,000 people, just like going crazy. They want to hear the new stuff. They're angry, and he just sees this wall of people. And the way, because of the elaborate setup for this tour, there was a space between them, and he didn't like the stadium tours because there was such a space. There was no intimacy, and so really, he just, by the end, famously, the very last show, there was a guy that was trying to climb in towards the stage, and Roger Waters started talking to the guy, and famously he spit. Once the guy came up, he spit on the guy's face, and he said he couldn't believe that he did that. And that was basically the end of, it was the last show. It was terrible, and everyone was angry, and it was really, really bad. So where do these ideas go for Roger Waters? Alienation, sea of people staring at him, no connection, feeling like there's a wall between them. See what I'm saying here? See what I mean? So that's where he gets his ideas for the wall, which would come after this. So concert, whenever I would see Roger Waters in concert, Sarah and I have now seen him in concert like 7 or 8 times. Anything off Animals I always get excited for, and he didn't always do that, but this last tour that we saw had a lot to do with Animals, which was awesome. I was so excited, and they always has the inflatable pig with the glowing eyes, and that's always a big highlight when it comes out. And I have told the story about how I saw Pink Floyd at Sullivan Stadium in 1988 with 60,000 people, and I was just in awe, and that 60-foot inflatable pig came out over the crowd on a cable, and something happened, and it broke, and it deflated over the crowd. And then as they were singing, we had to watch as a guy went out on a guide wire above everybody to try to fix the motor and get it back in. That was pretty amazing. Anyway, but this last tour was awesome, and I did a lot of stuff off of Animals. So when you think about this record, it's probably tied with The Wall for my favorite Pink Floyd record of all time. And if you just went by how many times I've actually played beginning to end the records, Animals wins every time. I've played it the most by far. It's hard, when you do The Wall, that's a big commitment. That's like, it's a double album. It's a long one, but Animals, you can just play that right on through. It's actually one of my favorite records of anybody of all time. So obviously I'm biased here. Fast forward, I would try not to get into politics too much, but this is 1977, and he has the song Pigs, and again, directed at that woman, White House, and he's, you know, he says the phrase White House, but you look at basically the lyrics of this song, and then he's very political, he started touring, and he basically reapplied all the graphics to go with the last presidency of the United States. So that's famously in that tour, and the performance that he does, I think in Rio de Janeiro, among like 300,000 people, the recording is just amazing, and that's what we're going to play for Song of the Day. We're doing 2 songs because we're going to do that one and Dogs, but anyway, you just can't believe how much the lyrics from 77 applied to how some people are feeling about that. So we're at 11 minutes. I knew it would be a long one. You had to stick with me. So what are the songs? You got Pigs on the Wing Part 1, Dogs. That's side 1. So let's think about it. You bought this record and it was instrumental or like a 2-line song, and then Dogs takes up the rest of the first side. You flip over the record and it's Pigs, the same song from the first side. Pigs, the song I just talked about, Sheep, and then the same song from the first side to end it. So there's 2 songs on the second side. Very strange, right, when you bought this album. So Dogs and Pigs are the highlights of this record, of course. So we'll play both of those for you. And if you haven't heard this album from Pink Floyd, I don't know, give it a listen. You can play it in the background. It takes a little bit of time to warm up to it, to the idea of what they're talking about. But it's not for everybody. But I'm a huge fan, and I'm just totally stoked to talk about it today. So I'm glad you sat with me and listened about Pink Floyd, Animals. I play it on my walk pretty regularly. So anyway, give it a listen if you haven't, and if you haven't heard it in a while, give it a listen. So that's your Saturday Song of the Day feature about animals. Tomorrow, Slow Down Sunday. More good stuff coming. Maybe we'll be Fireside again, and lots of good stuff coming next week as well. So hang with me, enjoy it. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and YouTube at The Rock Cave. Try to get those numbers up. Subscribe. Little plug there. Capitalism. Sorry, Roger. If you're around, hit me up. We can chat. Big fan. All right. Have a great day. And as usual, catch you on the flip side.